President.
Mr. Commissioner?
In typical professorial fashion, you chastised me last week for not answering a simple question. A question about who used my access card to this building on May 4th, 2021, the day of the primary election. You chose to double down on the fake news claims thrown at me. I have purposefully not answered that question in this form, as it has been posed by your minion, Assistant Ashtabula County Prosecutor Matthew Heberbrand.
Mr. Hammercheck, I object to the use of the term minion. That is disrespectful.
Point of order, sir. I have the floor.
Point of order. I am the chair, and I run this meeting. Unless a majority overrides me, we are governed by Robert's rules. I object to the use of the term minion, and I would ask you to speak respectfully.
So noted. Prefaced by his unsubstantiated claim that I have been involved in the greatest unsolved crime in the history of Lake County. Your former law student. At Monday's Republican Party meeting, I chose to answer that question when I was asked that question directly by Jan Clary in a very direct fashion. When I do choose to answer a question, I do so honestly. Contrast that with how you have answered a question or questions, such as questions from Mr. Weiss, not anyone's minion, let alone mine. You ignore his questions. Let me frame this in a form where truth really does matter. A court of law. Almost anything can be stated in a commissioner's meeting. Let us address constituent questions about your coursework at Liberty University, where you earned an A in ethics and statesmanship. Coursework that came under significant scrutiny in the Court of Claims, case number 2023-00347PQ last year. Your insurance lawyer, paid by the county's insurance carrier, was successful in getting that matter dismissed. A significant public records request and a court action that this Board of Commissioners was not even made aware of. At least this commissioner was not made aware of. Interestingly, one of those documents that came out in that litigation was this. Your campaign press release, touting your A in statesmanship.
Mr. Hammercheck, I'm going to ask you, are you simply going to attack your colleague, or do you have a point? Because you've been asked questions by the public, and instead of answering them, it seems that you are intent on attacking me. So I'm posing the question because the commission is busy, we have business to attend to. Are you simply going to attack me personally, or do you have an answer for the public?
Were you completely candid with your insurance counsel?
Mr.
Did you show them this press release?
Mr. Hammercheck.
The one that you put on Lake County Board of Commissioners letterhead? A simple, factual question.
Mr. Hammercheck, are
Might
you going to
that be
answer
an example of you not being forthright?
Mr. Hammercheck,
as a
I will
party
ask you
before a
one
court
more
of
time.
law?
I will ask you one more
Just
time.
curious.
Are you going to answer the public's questions, or are you just going to attack your colleagues?
Just
Which
curious.
is prohibited by our rules.
I am addressing constituent concerns, sir. Just curious. I really don't expect you to answer the question. You seem only to lecture others to answer questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. So are you prepared to answer the members of the public who would like to know, given your recent admission, that it was you using the ID card on election night, something I personally heard you state at the Republican Party meeting this Monday? Who were you with? Who plugged in the laptop, and what were you doing?
Commissioner, you seem to be quite energized of late, as I have been over months and almost a year now researching the veracity of constituent concerns, especially as they relate to you. I cannot help but wonder if the actions we've been witnessing over the last several months are merely purely calculated political attacks. I asked you a very simple question from a court of law. Did you share that press release on Lake County Board of Commissioners letterhead with legal counsel that was used or not used in a court of law to obtain a favorable opinion for yourself? That's a very legitimate and very concerning question to a number of constituents. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Hamercheck, the only constituent who seems to ask any nasty questions of me is a person for whom you have written not one but 2 letters of recommendation for his son. You've previously denied any relationship to him. It's obvious that is not the case given your line of statements today, but that's fine and fair. You can bring your friends to commissioners' meetings if you choose and use them to attack commissioners or other members of the public. But that does not take away from the fact that you have been asked several questions, and simply attacking other commissioners or throwing up questions of your own does not address the questions you've been given today. So I will ask one more time before we move on, are you prepared to answer the question, who was with you that night, who plugged in that laptop, and what were you trying to do? It's pretty clear from the silence there is no answer.
I'm sorry, sir. I was just collecting my thought, and you might have noticed there was a bit of a disruption from the audience. But I must confess, I did not think that even you would go and attack a child. I am stunned and taken aback.
Mr. Hamercheck, no. I object, no. To say that your colleague attacked a child, to say, no, that is unacceptable, sir. I ruled that out of order.
When a young man
Madam Clerk, let the record reflect that the chair has ruled Mr. Hamercheck out of order.
When a young
Let the record reflect he's been ruled out of order a second time.
When a young man
Let the record reflect he's been ruled out of order a third time, and make sure the
President.
minutes reflect that. 3 rulings of out of order.
Mr. President.
Mr. Commissioner, you do not have the floor.
Mr.
Commissioner, you do not have the floor. Mr. Commissioner,
for a letter of
let the record reflect you've been ruled out of order 4 times.
When a young man asks for a letter of
Mr. Commissioner, let the record reflect you've been ruled out of order 5 times.
a letter of reference
Let the record reflect you've been ruled out of order 6 times.
for a scholastic scholar.
Let the record reflect you've been ruled out of order 7 times. And please let it not be 7 times, 77 times, Mr. Commissioner. You do not have the floor. You, Mr. Commissioner, have repeatedly denied your connection to the circus that you have created at these meetings by bringing in obscene accusations. As I think of the loss of Atticus and the loss of my dog Beamer, Mr. Weiss's accusation that I raped my dog was one of the most painful and disgusting moments I have ever had to endure in public service. And your connection to this fiasco is very troubling. But that's fine. I understand that as an elected official, I have taken on a burden, and that sometimes we have to suffer things that no one else has to suffer. I have been honest and forthright. You, sir, have not. And you need to answer the public's questions or admit that you have some reason, legal or otherwise, why you cannot. And throwing out obscene attacks, accusing people of things they have not done to distract from your issue has to stop, sir. You cannot attack members of the public either. The threats that you levied against Mr. Hebebrand at the previous meeting were despicable, and they put the county at legal risk. Your behavior at these meetings have been beyond concerning. What I have seen you say to staff on camera and off camera creates a hostile work environment, sir. You have put everyone on pins and needles, and while we understand losing an election is hard, It's a cut to pride in a way that very few elected officials deal with well. So I don't expect you to deal with it well, sir. But this is not just your unideal self. This is unacceptable behavior. We have rules that we all are subject to. I was elected the chair to make sure that these meetings are conducted respectfully. And I have given you every benefit of the doubt. But your days of simply levying personal attacks against members of the public or other commissioners unanswered are over, sir. You've been extended every courtesy. Behave, conduct yourself with respect as your office requires from here on out, or you will be ruled out of order and it will be noted in the minutes. How many times? Because the record must reflect. And we need to give confidence to the public that they can come here and they can ask respectful questions without stating obscene things. That they can ask respectful questions without being retaliated against. Threatening someone's employment or their job or their application because you disagree with them or don't appreciate a question is not acceptable. Dare I say, that is evil. And while we all sin and we all make mistakes, do not do so repeatedly here, sitting next to me, and expect that you will not be challenged. Because I will protect Lake County. I will not allow you to excoriate members of the public or your colleagues unanswered. So please, if you want to answer the questions that have been asked of you today, answer those questions. But do not retort with some attack either on the person asking the question or your colleagues. You will be ruled out of order if you do.
A young man who volunteered for military service is who those reference letters were prepared and presented to at his request. A young man who turned 18 while he was going through basic training and only recently graduated from that basic training. A young man who puts his life at risk in service of his country to protect meetings such as this. A young man who cannot legally buy a cigarette or an alcoholic drink, but yet he can put his life on the line for people like you and myself. A young man who I dare say is more of a man today than you, sir, will ever be.
Let the record reflect I rule Mr. Hammercheck out of order another time for a personal attack. I lose count at this point, but please make sure the minutes reflect the proper tally. Do we have any new business to come before the board?
Mr. President.
Mr. Commissioner.
If I may.